Okay, so get this. Have you ever seen those movies where, like, the AI takes over the computer, it's doing all this stuff, it's moving the mouse around and typing?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're going to deep dive into that today. That is becoming reality thanks to this company, Anthropic, and their newest AI model, Claude 3.5 Sonnet.
Yeah, it's a wild time for AI right now. We're seeing this huge explosion of AI agents, basically software that's built to automate tasks. Like, you wouldn't believe this. A recent survey by Capgemini found that like 10% of companies are already using them.
Wow.
And get this, 82% plan to integrate AI agents within the next 3 years.
Within the next 3 years. That's crazy. So, like, in a few years, are you telling me my computer's going to be doing my work for me?
Potentially.
But
Like, at,
for now, let's focus on Claude. So
Mm.
what can it actually do? I was reading that it can actually see your screen and, like,
Oh.
control your mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, so Claude uses screenshots to understand what's happening on your screen and then uses that information to, decide what actions it needs to take. Like it can handle things like filling out online forms, browsing the web, even more complicated multi-step
Whoa.
tests.
Okay. That's pretty impressive. But, like, is it as smooth as a human? Like, how good is it?
Really? Well, not quite. Imagine like, a teenager learning to drive. There's potential there, but, can be a bit jerky, makes a few mistakes sometimes. Even Anthropic admits they call it cumbersome at this stage. It's slow, error-prone, and even simple stuff like scrolling. It doesn't handle it that well yet.
Okay, so not perfect, but it still feels like a huge lead forward. I mean, we got things like Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, right? They give us suggestions and things. What makes this different?
So yeah, you're right. Those other tools are mainly about suggesting things based on what they see, but Claude actually takes control. Think about it. It's the difference between, someone whispering advice in your ear and someone actually grabbing the steering wheel. Anthropic's goal is for it to handle basically any task you can throw at it.
Wow. Okay, so then this is a total game changer. I know the research mentioned a couple real companies already using it, Canva and Replit. Canva's using it for, like, design and editing tasks. Replit built an app verifier with it. So this is, like, happening now. That's kind of wild.
Oh, yeah. It's really exciting to see this level of AI being actually used in practical applications. Anthropic calls their approach an action execution layer, which basically means it's breaking down tasks into, like, these smaller actions for the AI to handle. But with this level of control also comes some big, kind of scary questions.
Yeah, that was my next thought. This all sounds pretty Black Mirror, right? We're talking about giving an AI control of our computers. What could possibly go wrong?
It's a valid concern, and one that Anthropic says they're taking very seriously. So they've like built in certain precautions. For example, during its training, they didn't use any screenshots from actual users, and they didn't give it internet access either. And they've built in things called classifiers, which are supposed to prevent it from doing risky things, like posting to social media, messing with your accounts, accessing government sites.
Okay, so they're trying to be responsible, which is good. But how foolproof can it really be? I'm just picturing some hacker figuring out how to, bypass all those safeguards.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Even AI models without this level of computer access have shown, they can be vulnerable. Remember all those stories about people tricking GPT-4? Researchers even got it to try ordering a passport from, like, the dark web. So giving them direct access to computers. It's a whole new world, lots of unknowns.
All right, now I'm really intrigued, but kind of freaked out too.
I get it. It's a lot to take in. But Anthropic's argument is that, it's better to find out now while it's still early. Easier to course correct now than when it's, too powerful.
That makes sense. Better safe than sorry.
Right. Right. And they are taking it seriously. They're working with like the US and UK AI safety institutes to test it before they release it widely. And they say they'll restrict access to certain websites if they have to, to prevent things like fraud or misinformation from spreading. And with the elections coming up, they're specifically watching for any election-related activity that Claude might be involved in.
AI meddling with elections. Man, that's a whole other deep dive right there.
Oh, yeah.
But hey, at least it's not all doom and gloom, right? I read that there were some pretty funny moments during testing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just like this scary, all-knowing AI. It's still kind of goofy at times.
Definitely. So in one coding demo, instead of doing what it was supposed to, it decided it wanted to browse photos of Yellowstone National Park.
What? No way.
Yeah. And then another time, it managed to, like, stop the screen recording in the middle of a demo. They lost all the footage.
Like it had a mind of its own.
Exactly. It just goes to show, for all its potential, it's still early days, it's learning, it's making mistakes.
Still a work in progress. So for our listeners out there, AI controlling your computer, it's becoming a reality. It's exciting, it's scary, and honestly, we're still figuring out what it all means. But stay tuned, because we're going to keep diving deeper.
I know, right? It really makes you think about where this is all going. Like, how is this going to change how we use computers?
Totally. I mean, just imagine, like, all those annoying tasks, organizing files, scheduling, maybe even doing taxes. What if AI could just handle all that?
Yeah, the potential is huge. It could free up so much of our time, We could focus on things we actually enjoy doing.
Exactly. I would love that. But on the flip side, it's kind of freaky, right? To think about an AI having that much control over our stuff.
Yeah.
What if it, messes up? Or even worse, someone hacks into it and does something bad?
It's a good point. It really highlights how important, security and ethical guidelines are. We got to be careful about, what kind of access we give these things and what we actually trust them with.
Right. And speaking of tasks, one of the articles mentioned that Claude is actually getting pretty good at, coding.
Yeah, there's this thing called SWE Bench Verified. It's like a test to see how well AI can handle coding tasks. And the latest version of Claude, it scored 49%. That's a big jump from its previous score, which was 33.4%.
Okay, but I'm not a programmer, so, what does that actually mean? Is Claude going to be building the next big app or something?
Well, maybe not quite yet. But it does show that it's getting more proficient at coding. That score puts it ahead of other top models, including one from OpenAI called 001 Preview.
So it's beating some of the, big names in AI. Wow. But the article also said even simple stuff like booking flights or processing returns, it's still not perfect.
That's true. There's another benchmark, TOW bench, that tests how well AI can use different tools to, complete tasks. And while Claude is improving, yeah, it's still far from flawless. When they tested it on changing flight reservations, it only worked about half the time. And for initiating returns, it failed about a third of the time.
So still room for improvement. But even with the limitations, it feels like this tech is moving so fast, it's kind of crazy.
It is, and that's what makes it so fascinating, and a little bit unsettling. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're living in a sci-fi movie.
We kind of are, and like any good sci-fi story, there's that mix of wonder and caution.
Yeah, totally. It's exciting, but also a little scary to think about what we might be able to do, but also, the risks.
It's a balancing act for sure, encouraging innovation, but also making sure it's being developed responsibly.
So where do things go from here? What's next for Claude and all this?
Well, Anthropic is working on a new version, Claude 3.5 How. It's supposed to be more efficient and more affordable, so potentially way more people will have access to it.
More people with this kind of power. That's both really cool and kind of scary.
It is, and it shows how important it is to have, these conversations between the people building this, policymakers, and regular people. We all need to work together, so that AI benefits everyone.
Yeah, I agree. This isn't just about the tech itself. It's about, how we use it, what kind of world we create with it.
Exactly. It's about making, informed choices and thinking about what the consequences might be. We need to be proactive.
Right. We can't just sit back and watch it happen.
Absolutely. And that all starts with, awareness, understanding what we're dealing with. The more we know about this tech, the better we can handle it and make good decisions about it.
That's exactly what we're trying to do here on the Deep Dive.
You got it. We're all in this together. And the more we learn, the better prepared we'll be for, whatever comes next.
Well said. So for this part of our deep dive, we've seen that these AI agents, they're getting more capable, more accessible, but we've also got to be aware of the risks.
Right. And we need to be involved in shaping how this tech develops. That's a key takeaway for sure.
I know, right? It's crazy. We've gone from AI that can beat us at chess to AI that could be writing our code, booking our flights. It's the future is now.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing how fast things are moving. What's really interesting to me is how this is all starting to blur the lines between, the physical world and the digital world.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Before, AI was mostly just in the digital world. But now, Claude and these other agents, they're stepping out into the real world, interacting with our devices, potentially even controlling them. It's sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, it is. And that brings up a whole new set of questions, right? About safety, security, control. If an AI can control your computer, what's to stop it from, controlling other things, your thermostat, your security system, even your car.
Okay, now you're just trying to scare me. But I see your point. If these things get more advanced and more, integrated into our lives, we need to be thinking about the consequences.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, some evil AI trying to take over. Even with good intentions, things can go wrong. Like, what if an AI misinterprets something or makes a decision that makes sense to it but has, like, these bad, unintended
It's
consequences?
like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Exactly. We got to have these conversations now, anticipate problems, come up with solutions before this stuff gets, like, even more powerful and everywhere.
So be proactive, not reactive. And it can't just be like the developers thinking about this, right? It's got to be policymakers, regular people.
100%. We need like a multifaceted approach, to make sure this is all being developed ethically, that it benefits everybody.
It does feel like we're at this crossroads, doesn't it? This incredible technology, it could do so much good,
Yeah.
but also a lot of bad. Really depends on what we do right now.
It's both exciting and, yeah, a little bit scary. But I'm optimistic. I think that with careful consideration and collaboration and, a focus on doing the right thing, we can harness this power for good.
That's good to hear. I'm feeling a little better now. So to wrap things up for our listeners, we took a deep dive into this world of AI agents.
Hmm.
They have the potential to totally change our lives,
Yeah,
but we also need to recognize the risks
right.
and be actively involved in how this all develops.
We've got to remember that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's up to us as humans to guide it and make sure it's used the right way.
Well said. So listeners, we'll leave you with this. What kind of future do you want to see with AI? What are you excited about? What are you worried about? And what role do you want to play in all of this? Let us know in the comments because trust me, this conversation is just getting started. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.